cover three things. Tiffany Henyard, her Thornton Township board folks, they're really upset. They are upset that, Tiffany Henyard has not given them any transparency. Can you believe that? I mean, what is going on? Lack of transparency in Thornton Township. I am shocked. I am appalled. No. So what they're doing is that the township members, they're basically saying, hey, you don't have your act together. So we're not coming. No pay, no play. So we've got that. We've also got Tiffany Henyard she called the police and had banners taken down. We haven't talked about that one. You've probably seen it elsewhere. We're going to talk about that. We're going to watch a video. Tiffany Henyard didn't pay her bill to have these banners installed up and down Main Street in Dalton, I think it is. So the company goes out to repo the banners and it gets in this altercation with the banner sign company. It just all this crazy back and forth. And then the third part of the trifecta here is Brandon Johnson had a 50-0 vote in the city of Chicago against his $300 million tax proposal after spending $575 million on the illegals. We're going to hear just a scooch of testimony from people in Chicago. They are hot. They are hot because their taxpayers' money is being spent, kind of like here in Thornton, right? Let's get into this one. The challenges to Tiffany Henyard's control in the south suburbs are escalating yet again. Two Thornton Township trustees said they will skip tonight's board meeting because Supervisor Henyard failed to provide adequate answers about spending. Now, Tiffany Henyard basically just, she doesn't provide answers about anything, except that here's the answer she gives. I'm going to go ahead and disclose all this information. I'm going to get you all the information you need at this next meeting. You can get this information from them. You can get this information from them. You can get this information from here. And the information is never there. And she never gives the information. And she never comes clean about any of this stuff. It's just push it down the road, kick the can down the road, kick it down the road. We'll see how that works out. Well, the trustees are basically, and we're also today going to look at the meeting agenda because that's the guts of what we're talking about. Why aren't these trustees willing to meet with Tiffany Henyard? Now, Tiffany Henyard will go ahead and hold the meeting, I'm sure, because she will use it to basically just do yet another diatribe. So I'll look and see what that looks like. But, covering yet another one of Tiffany Henyard's where she just talks about stuff. I mean, she just says so much nonsense. Trustees opposed to Henyard said skipping the meeting will prevent votes on Henyard's agenda items. So, how is the Township of Thornton ever going to get anything done? How are they going to, you've got some major issues. Like the bank basically said, you need to square away what we're doing with money here. And they've got to set up a bunch of bank accounts and that's not happening. None of this stuff is happening. The opponents also said they hoped it could force a public vote to appoint a new trustee. And another thing I haven't covered, but you've got the Township of Thornton, you've got the Village of Dalton, basically running to the court system on a daily basis, trying to figure out what it is, literally who's on first. What are we doing? What's going on, guys? Because they can't even get together who their chief of police is, who is literally. The chief of police doesn't have the right credentials right now to be chief of police, to be a law enforcement officer. But the court system said, we'll give you a 30-day trial run here. And so he's basically up and running. I mean, it's not the blind leading the blind. It's far worse than that. It's just this craziness going on. Here's another article from Fox. So we got two Thornton Township trustees, Christopher Gonzalez, who I think is a straight shooter. The guy seems reasonable, right? And Carmen Carlisle, she seems totally fair. I know Tiffany Henyard calls her lying Carmen Carlisle, but she's not lying. She's just standing up for the citizens and the residents for what she believes are just absolute craziness going on in Township of Thornton. So they're boycotting the upcoming board meeting due to concerns about transparency and accountability. They argue the meeting's agenda lacks proper vetting and includes items that could lead to unnecessary conflict. Trustees specifically object to an agenda item calling for the appointment of a new board member. Because remember how that one guy stepped down? Jones, was it? I think it was Jones. Let me know in the comments. So trustees' absence will prevent a quorum. That means they don't have enough people to make any decisions. So this meeting, another meeting is set up and it's going absolutely nowhere. So Christopher Gonzalez and Carmen Carlisle, they send out a joint thing saying, you know what? We're not doing this. Homie, don't play that game, right? Just no, we're not doing it. And so Tiffany Henyard will go on the offensive. She will go on and say, I'm here. I'm working for you. I'm here for the people. You see me sitting right here, and there'll be about a dozen of her supporters, sitting in the meeting. Other people aren't going to show up because business isn't going to take place. And Tiffany Henyard is more than likely just going to use it as, a town hall, one-person town hall. So, yeah, the trustees expressed concern over an agenda item calling for the appointment of a new board member. So they're thinking that Tiffany Henyard's just basically going to shove it down their throat, and they haven't gone through the right process to make this happen. And, the more that I see from all this craziness, it just makes me realize how little I think Tiffany Henyard respects the process and respects basically law and order and respects how things operate. And I'll get to that in a moment here. Okay. Here is the board. Now, I know this is boring looking stuff, but this is the story, right? This is the story. Can you imagine sitting down and writing this stuff up? Oh, here's what we're going to do today. And then we're going to sit there and talk about it. Shoot me, right? Shoot me. I could not handle with it. I can barely sit through, these board meetings when Tiffany isn't there because there's no fireworks. I want Tiffany to say something ridiculous and then, I can make fun of it in my head. But here we go. New business. All right. Motion to authorize Thornton Township to open the following checking accounts at one of the approved banks below. They need to open up, operating checking account, saving account, health insurance account. They need to get stuff going. They've got they're appointing a couple of things. Let's see if I can get my magic yellow wand. All right. Got approval of, we've got, approval of supervisor's 100% property tax refund for all homeowners of Thornton Township. Now that has been a major sticking point because Tiffany Henyard hasn't shared what that looks like, how much it is, how much each person gets, how does that go? And it's a couple $1,000,000 and it's going to be maybe $20, $40. It's going to be $20 or $40, refund to each person. And thank you, Ronette Brown, Jerry Jones for the win. I was going to say Jerry Jones. That's the owner of the Cowboys, right? That's the owner of the Cowboys. It's not doing a very good job. Cowboys suck. Man, they've sucked for a while, haven't they? And then we've got approval for a bunch of other stuff. How about an aerator for lawn maintenance at Thornton Township building? I'm surprised they don't have one. Do they not have one? It's one of those machines that plugs, puts the plugs into the lawn and then pulls them out. And you put topsoil in and you fertilize it. It's a springtime deal. We've got approval of forensic audit proposal submitted by Ide Bailey. Fill the vacancy of township trustee by appointment pursuant to whatever code, and then oath of office, new trustee. I mean, whoever put this together is just very, very optimistic that any of this stuff is going to happen, because it ain't happening. And it's especially not happening when Carmen Carlisle and Chris Gonzalez are gone. So yet another township township meeting where absolutely nothing is going to go on. A big goose egg. You know, if Tiffany Henyard talks, I mean, it's going to be yet another Tiffany Henyard just, rant. So she gets out her side of things, and everybody else knows the deal. The deal is that anything that Tiffany Henyard is involved with right now comes to a grinding halt. And that is our next segment here. Watch a little video. What do you say? I mean, you may have seen this video. I've seen it a bunch, but it wasn't a big enough topic where I wanted to do a whole podcast on it or a live stream, but it's pretty interesting. What I would say here is that this is emblematic of everything that is wrong in Dalton and Thornton right now from the standpoint of literally, I keep referencing who's on first because it's that old comedy bit where who's on first, you just don't know what's going on, who's got what's going on. But there's a guy in this video. Let's just watch it, right? Dalton, I believe.
Something's going on with these guys?
Yeah, they basically taking down my signs.
Yeah,
I just asked him who told y'all to take them down. He called it false order.
Oh, okay.
I'm just.
So I told him to send,
Keith
Keith don't work for the village no more. He's not the DA, Michael Smith is. So I said, who gave y'all the order to take the sign down? How y'all getting paid?
Oh, okay.
They're our signs. Well, they're my signs. So why
Habla
are
este
they taking them
número y este señor. Habla este número.
Ella lo que me explica, ella es la mayor, y me dice que él ya no tiene derecho a dar órdenes, él ya está despedido.
Es que la verdad, a mí me mandan a hacer el trabajo.
Sí.
La verdad, yo no, ¿a qué puedo decirle?
So how many have they already taken down?
It's all of them. All of
them. So everything from White Castles all up to Sego. Well, to
Heath that gave him the...
Yeah, I'll press the charges on Keith, just so you know. I'm just about to write a report to me. Press charges on him, and they just in the middle of...
Okay. She's talking about pressing charges. Pressing charges. For what? There's been nothing illegal. The issue here is that these signs, a whole bunch of these signs are lining the streets of Dalton downtown, and the sign company hasn't been paid for them. $20,000. And they're like, hey, we haven't been paid. We're going to pull those down. Now, these are Village of Dalton signs. These are not Tiffany Henyard signs. These are signs paid for by the taxpayers and paid for to have them installed by the taxpayers. And Tiffany Henyard is pissed that they're getting taken down, even though she hasn't paid the bill. Simple as that. Just like her rent hasn't paid the bill and gets evicted, right?
But if I got to press charges on them too, because they taking government property down. I didn't give that.
I didn't even know you were involved in this. I just heard about signs. Yeah. It wasn't even my call, but I stopped.
Yeah. So now they taking down signs. For what? Who paying them? Wait. Y'all gonna do
So ya le pagaron a usted?
No, yo mandé a mi patrón a hacer el trabajo.
¿Quién es su patrón?
Ya con ella.
He said his boss spoke to you already?
Yeah, he did. He put him on the phone.
Oh, he did?
He sent the email that whoever gave him the order.
Oh, okay.
About the signs. Because I want all my signs. Because he got all my signs in his truck.
I mean, what I laugh at, bears. Who doesn't want to watch a bear, right? What I laugh at there is that, I mean, press charges. It's not illegal to take a sign down. It's not illegal. You take that to civil court. This is not, you know what I'm saying? It just makes absolutely no sense. And so the more I see this stuff and the more I see Tiffany Henyard's interaction, she just throws out a bunch of nonsense and hopes it sticks. You throw enough stuff to the wall, maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't. Well, Dalton dictator, I love New York Post. The Dalton dictator, Mayor Tiffany Henyard, called cops on workers removing banners on her face as the vendor claims it's owed $20,000. So bad. Footage obtained by NBC5 Chicago showed the controversial leader asking for charges to be filed against the village administrator and possibly even the workers, removing the signage at the behest of the village's dissenting trustees. They want these signs down. They're like, no, we never approved this. This was something that Tiffany Henyard just did on her own. She used Dalton money. Like, who knows? Maybe she used trustee money. We don't even know, right? I mean, press charges on him and they just in the middle of it. But if I got to press charges on them too, because they are taking government property down, Henyard told an officer. I didn't give that order. Well, when you don't pay, you don't get a play. So take your little whatever and go home. Now, what happened is Tiffany Henyard had her chief of police come out there and they got all their signs back. So just basically bullying, because the dude in the construction truck, the Hispanic gentleman, he's like, man, I don't know. I don't know. And the cop is like, I don't know. It's not even my call. I just came out here and stopped because I heard something chatter and I was right here and they're talking about signs. I mean, you got bigger problems. You got bigger fish to fry than, some signs. And how about this? Pay for your signs. Pay your $20K. Pay your $20K. I mean, why aren't that's the big issue right now is Village of Dalton is basically insolvent, doesn't have money to pay for all this extra stuff. And so there's literally not enough money in the operating budget to make it happen. And even if there was, odds are these bills wouldn't get paid anyway, because there's millions of outstanding bills that just simply haven't been paid. The flashy banners were given back to Henyard's team after the acting police chief, Ronald Berg Sr., showed up. I mean, she just uses her henchmen. Hey, that's our sign. Give it back. That's our sign. And you're like, wait a minute. You didn't pay for it. So no, you don't get it back. And you've got, until you pay for that stuff. And I don't know what the contract is, but I would assume they get the banners, right? Custom banners get put up. The banners were reportedly put up along a main road in Dalton over the summer, but the vendor who supplied them claimed her company hadn't been paid. Dawn Harmon of Mosca Design told the station she's owed nearly $20K from the village. It's very frustrating. It's something we did based on her calling. Tiff calls up and says, yeah, we're going to need some signs. Can you do it? Because who thinks that a mayor isn't going to pay, right? You get the mayor of a city. What kind of bad faith is that? What kind of mayor are you if you don't pay the bill? And so the vendor took her word and signed the documents. We've implemented some changes to prevent this in the future, meaning they'll get paid up front, right? COD, if not paid up front. An attorney for Henyard, reached by NBC5, declined to comment. Yeah, which thing are you calling on? Which one of 54 items are on my checklist today to get packed back to people? Oh, the signs. Yeah, no comment. Because she looks terrible. And it's not a legal issue. The only legal issue is that she needs to pay her bills. Opposing Dalton trustees slammed the mayor in a statement to the local outlet. Mayor Henyard's continued practice of engaging vendors without authority or board approval is deeply concerning. One of my favorite words, concerning. I have great concern. You're on fire. I'm concerned that you're going to get burned, right? The disregard for proper protocol serves only to promote her personal agenda while unfairly burdening taxpayers with the costs. Unburdened. Remember that statement? Ugh. The eccentric leader is known for having signage and posters touting herself around the area, though it led to one resident telling the Post back in February, it's the behavior of a dictator like Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Man, Venezuelans do not like Maduro. I mean, they hammer on him because he's so bad. Henyard has battled critics over the years over allegations she misused taxpayer funds. This is one of those gray areas, right? Where, so she's got all these big banners up and they say, Tiffany Henyard, super mayor, and then they'll say, Village of Dalton in very tiny. And she'll do the same thing in Thornton, where it'll be Tiffany Henyard is just the main casing. And then underneath that, Township of Thornton supervisors. So she really promotes herself. But in these instances, she's got to pay the bills. You just got to pay the bills. And then the issue goes away. And then there's the issue of, hey, okay, who's got the signs? What other jurisdiction, what other city do you know where the mayor is standing around on the sidewalk going, they're taking my signs, I want to press charges? That's just insanity. It's just, What more can you say? She's she's a nutcase and deserves all of the clickbait, as she calls the media. She deserves all the clickbait that she gets. All right. We're going to move on to Brandon Johnson, because Brandon Johnson is getting some clickbait. Oh, I mean, this kind of goes to that greater Chicago issue, right? I mean, and Brandon Johnson, I don't know if you've heard this, but Brandon Johnson lost a vote 50-0. That is an absolute spanking of the greatest magnitude, because there should be at least one or two of the aldermen who said, yeah, I'm going to go with this. But instead, they basically said en masse, no. Let's listen to what some of the constituents had to say.
We paid for these properties for a purpose and not for you to go touching it with $300 million that you want to siphon out of the citizens' pocket. Get rid of the illegals, and that'll take your money right back.
You're a criminal. Why do I got to address you? The feds need to address you. DOJ need to address you, and hopefully Donald Trump will address you, because you're going to protect the undocumented while you're going to allow for the citizens in Chicago to suffer.
Look at all the red. They're all wearing red. That first gal, you might say firefighter. Okay. You got 3 for 3 in Chicago. Council meeting, red.
Oh, you leave that loser where he is. He's a loser. He's a loser.
Wow, look at that. Angry Chicago residents are furious. Mayor Brandon Johnson's proposed $300 million property tax hike are being used to cover the costs of the city's migrant crisis. Anthony Napolitano is a Chicago alderman and a former Chicago police officer, and he joins me now. Alderman, good morning to you. So the city council ultimately voted this plan down.
This is interesting.
And I'm sure spurred on by those angry residents that you just heard. But tell us more about that town hall meeting, and just from your perspective, what is it like to hear all of these angry residents, angry with the direction Chicago is going, speaking out and telling the mayor enough is enough?
Yeah, we see that on a day-to-day basis now in City Hall. There's people that show up constantly ready to show how they feel about the way government's being run in the city. You know, to answer that question, the best way is about 9 months ago, we tried to put a referendum just on this recent ballot, asking Chicagoans if they want to remain a sanctuary city. And the administration, the mayor and his administration, did everything they could to keep that off the ballot, because they did not want to know what we already knew, that residents of Chicago are fed up with the illegal immigrants in the city of Chicago. We told them that this spending was going to come back and bite them in the butt when they worked the next budget, and sure enough, it did. Now they were asking for well over $350 million just to cover the cost that we put into those migrants. So, we knew this was coming. They didn't want to believe us. And now it's great to see our residents come out and tell the mayor in person.
Yeah. So ultimately, what you just said is that the residents weren't able to vote on whether or not Chicago should proceed in being a sanctuary city. How did that go over with the residents when they learned that they weren't going to be able to vote on it?
They were furious. And this was a battle that went on for months. And they were showing up day after day to our committee meetings and our council meetings, saying that they want this to be on the referendum so they can vote. We knew the numbers were going to be in the high 60s and high 70s of residents that do not want to be a sanctuary city anymore, do not want to be dumping tax dollars into these illegal.
High 60s, high 70s, meaning the vast majority, 3/4 of the people don't want to be a sanctuary city, because it doesn't do them any good. This is Chicago. You've already got issues. In Dalton, you got 20% of the folks living below the poverty line, and 90% of those are black. What are you doing taking in illegals? Oh, we're a sanctuary city.
Immigrants, but the city and the administration, the mayor did everything they can to keep it off the ballot. So they're furious. They have every right to be this angry right now.
So a lot of these residents were saying that this $300 million tax hike would be used to cover the cost of illegal immigrants.
So it doesn't go directly to the illegal immigrants, but the reason I played that, because it's yet another example of political leadership. You hired these people and then you're surprised at what they do, right? I think in Tiffany Henyard's case, I think she was more, for lack of a better word, this doesn't describe her, but more conservative. until she became into a position of power. Meaning until she became the mayor. She wasn't crazy. She was crazy, but she wasn't exhibiting those kind of tendencies. Mayor Brandon, let's go Brandon Johnson in Chicago. He's a progressive. He's a Democrat and he's a progressive. How did you think that was going to work out? And so what the residents in Chicago, greater Chicago, are saying right now is, hey, you just spent $574 million on the illegals. We didn't get that money. We didn't ask to be a sanctuary city. What are you doing? Constituents in Township of Thornton are saying, hey, we don't have any of the information here to make good decisions. So boop, we're out. We're not going to sit in on your little meeting because you're trying to shove stuff down our throat. And as you saw with Let's Go Brandon Johnson, he basically didn't allow the referendum to be put in front of the constituents. Hey, do you want to continue being a sanctuary city? Because he knew, just like the presidential election, it was going to be a blowout. High 60s into the 70s, 75% are going to say, no, simply no. We don't want our taxpayers' dollars going to that. And one of the big things that Mayor Brandon Johnson, Let's Go Brandon Johnson, you got to throw that in there every single time you get the opportunity. When Let's Go Brandon Johnson, he had the opportunity to not be a sanctuary city, but he never ran that past the constituents. They never had the opportunity to vote. And so when they did have that, trying to get that on the November election, he basically, he quashed it. He crushed it because he didn't want to hear from his constituents. Oh, yeah, they don't want to be a sanctuary city. And another major thing Let's Go Brandon Johnson did is during his campaign, he campaigned on no new taxes, right? Who was that? I think Bush. Was that Bush Jr.? No, Bush Sr.? I can't remember. Maybe you don't. I remember because, I'm old. And I remember, watching the news and not really understanding whatever any of it meant, but no new taxes. That's exactly how Brandon Johnson ran. And yet here he is throwing out, hey, guys, how about a $300 million tax proposal? Let's do this. It's going to be great. I mean, think about all that good stuff that the illegals got. Now, it's not fair to say that the 300 goes right to the illegals. It's an ongoing rolling budget. But had they not spent $574 million or whatever, this would be a wildly different story, wouldn't it? Yeah, you maybe wouldn't have the $1 billion budget deficit that Chicago is operating under. And you know what? It's not just Chicago. It's New York. It's Denver. It's so many of these big blue liberal cities that even in these big blue liberal cities, even in Chicago, they shifted to the right. They shifted red. One of the few counties in the United States that didn't do that, that just doubled down on voting blue. Yeah, the one I'm sitting in right now, King County. Yeah. Because, if things don't work well, just keep going down the same route. Just keep going, vote the same people in. It'll be fine. Now, Seattle's got some change up at the city council, but as a populace, what's happening is people are moving away from Seattle and going to red states that are conservative, but more people are coming here that are liberal and blue because where else are they going to go? You know what I mean? Because in other areas of the country, people are pushing back and saying, no, enough of this absolute ridiculousness. We're not tolerating this anymore. And to see people wearing red in Chicago, I mean, that's like, what? You're doing what? I mean, you've got stories here in Seattle of people wearing a MAGA hat and, taking a beat down. I mean, there's some crazy stuff. One gal got really worked up and whacked her father or dad with an ice axe, killed him. I mean, just beat the crap out of him. She was so upset that she over the election that she, you've got mentally nutso people, and some of them are elected officials like Tiffany Henyard. Because you can't even get a meeting in now. Can't even get a meeting in. And how are they ever going to have this sit down and go over all of these agenda items? How are they ever going to get a meeting together where they can honestly go through that if Tiffany Henyard doesn't disclose, basically what she's thinking with all this stuff? How's that going to go? How are you going to get the general fund, the assistance fund, and the bridge fund? How are you going to get all that approved if you don't even know where you stand? You just, you have no idea. And we're talking about Township of Thornton here, right? That's what we're talking about today. And Township of Thornton is in way better shape. Financially, they've got a big bonus. They've got a big surplus. And that's what Tiffany Henyard's talking about, doing a refund. She calls it her refund. And a lot of what I see there is that you've got a bunch of people in Dalton and in Thornton who operate under this guise of she's giving money free to us. And it's not. It's your own taxpayers' dollars. So that's your money coming back to you. It's like getting a big refund from the IRS. That is not the position you want to be in. You want to owe just a little bit of money. Because if you get a big refund back from the IRS, that means they borrowed your money and didn't pay you interest and didn't even give you a kiss, right? Not even a kiss. So you don't want to be on that end. And to have a $2 million refund coming, that means they just overcharged, didn't need all the tax levy, to cover all of their bills. Now, one of my main questions about this whole Tiffany Henyard thing is, how can there be such a big surplus in Thornton? I know Thornton is a much larger municipality. It's got 17 villages consisting in it. It's the biggest one in Illinois. How can they be positive 5 million or whatever? And Village of Dalton is negative 3 million, and it's a much, much smaller village. Just something isn't adding up right. Now, I know Tiffany Henyard has cooked the books, but there should be some book cooking on Thornton as well. But I think the checks and balances in Thornton, as we can see by these meetings, you've got folks that are saying, no, hey, wait a minute. We got stuff going on here. So it's really interesting to follow this. I'm going to see tonight if this meeting actually happens. I was watching, Hannibal is Hungry, of course, earlier, and he said he thought the meeting was still going to go on. So I'll check in with Critical Smoker and all the rest and see if that meeting goes on and see if it's something I need to, put out a video on. But I'm guessing it's just going to be Tiff with another one of her massive, massive rants that just kind of go nowhere. And she promises the moon as far as this is what we're going to be covering. And that just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? She just says a bunch of stuff and you're left at the end with, she said that last time. And for you guys that have been following this for a long time, she said this last year. She said this so far back, and it's just gotten worse. It's gotten worse. And her whole deal with the rental house. I mean, what's up with that? She never lived in it. I mean, changed the locks out. There's some, I don't want to say nefarious stuff going on, but like we started off with transparency concerns. I have great concerns about transparency. That's what it comes down to, right? And so Township of Thornton doesn't want to make any of these decisions unless they've got their, what in order. And they don't. And how is that ever going to happen? I don't know, but it sure is a shit show, isn't it? And that's why you're tuning in here on News for Reasonable People. All right. That's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you have a great time. I'm going to have probably two more live streams before Thanksgiving, do a little Thanksgiving break. Thanks again for being here. If something comes up, you know where to go. All right. Thanks again. Bye for now.